السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونشكره ولا نكفره، ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فهو المهتد، ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة فكشف الله به الغمة، فجزاه الله عنا خير ما جازى نبيا عن أمته وداعيا عن دعوته. ثم ما بعد، يقول الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. اللهم اجعلنا من عبادك الفائزين، واجعلنا من عبادك الصالحين، واجعلنا من عبادك المفلحين، واجعلنا من عبادك المتقين، واجعلنا من ورثة جنة النعيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم آمين. ثم أما بعد، نسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم الرحمة والغفران والنصر لإخواننا في غزة، اللهم آمين. اللهم ارحم إخوان المسلمين في غزة يا رب العالمين. اللهم منزل الكتاب ومجري السحاب وهازم الأحزاب، اهزمهم وانصرنا عليهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم احفظهم من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم وعن أيمانهم وعن شمائلهم ومن فوقهم ومن تحتهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم احفظهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم ارحمهم وارحم نساءهم وأطفالهم وشيوخهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم آمين. Ya Allah, have mercy upon the people of Gaza as this moment by moment right now, every time we think things cool down and the death, toll is going down, it actually escalates by the oppressors, by the aggressors, by the occupiers. And subhanallah, it's no more something that is puzzling us Muslims. This is, alhamdulillah, that this is no more a Palestinian issue. This is no more an Arab issue. This is no more even a Muslim issue. This is a world issue, the world's consciousness. I go from one university to another, speaking at different places, and I see that the majority of the people at these encampments are not Muslims. All the time, the majority, the vast majority are not Muslims. And this is becoming a global issue. Unfortunately, this is a nasr in itself. This is a victory. But unfortunately, it is at a very, very, very heavy price. I have an almost 6 years old daughter. And when I see these girls similar to my daughter, being bombed, and they're like shaken to their core, when you're a child and you get attacked, you run to your mom and dad. What happens when there is no mom and dad? And there is no home? And more, you probably have even lost a limb or two. How can a child process that? When you see that girl, 9 years old, when she was saying after she woke up from the surgery, I want my legs, I want my feet back, I want my feet back. I mean, how, this is not something, this is not a tragedy that is happening now. No, this is a tragedy that will be lived for the next 67 years by these children until the day they die. I mean, it's devastating to live without one limb. Now imagine 2 or 3 or 4, and or without an eye, or without an ear, or with complete disfigurement to your face. The burning, so much skin burns happening. How are we going to process that? The thing, my dear brothers and sisters, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens our eyes in the Quran, to explore how, what is your duty and what is the cause of that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that Allah would have not let the believers stay in the position that they are in. Allah would not let the believer live comfortably. And all the believers are one body. So we are, the whole believers around the world, the Muslims, have went to sleep. I mean, again, it's a heavy price. But I want you to imagine that there is no Palestinian issue. Palestine got liberated, took independence with all the rest of the Arab world, with India and China, when the British Empire collapsed at the Second World War. Now imagine there is no Palestine. Would the situation of Muslims be better? No. Look at the countries that has no Palestine. The colonialists left, and they left behind them leaders that ensure the oppression of their own people. These leaders, some of them turned out that they are not fully sincere to the colonialist power. They were half sincere. They did not have complete ikhlas, they had half ikhlas. So they had some nationalism in them, and then they were sellouts, half sellout. That was not good enough. They had to get rid of them and bring a whole group of leaders that is have 100% ikhlas, meaning they are 100% sellout. But you know, if you look at these Muslims who are selling out their own nations, you know, at least now the entire world and the entire Muslim Ummah is uniting around the issue of Palestine. Imagine that there is no Palestine. I believe our state as an Ummah would have been 100 times worse than now. At least there is something now that is uniting us. Again, I say this and I am ashamed because the price is very heavy. No child should pay the price of you and I waking up and getting out of our comfort zone. But it is a very scary business. I'll tell you, my dear brothers and sisters, your life cannot go on as usual. You cannot, at these days, stay in your comfort zone. Otherwise, you will be counted within the munafiqeen that do not care about the state of other believers. And even when the believers are defeated, they're happy. And when the believers win, they're sad. This is the characteristics of the munafiqeen. It's not enough to say, oh, I am bothered. No. You have to be involved in making dua. You have to be involved in donating. You have to be involved in activism. You have to show your family and make your family bring up the issue every day. You living at your comfort zone these days is haram, wrong, nifaq. This is unacceptable. You should constantly be thinking, how can I help them? How can I help them? How can I? Just for you to be a normal believer, not a high class believer, just a normal believer in the eyes of Allah. Because anything less than that, you will fall into nifaq. And there is no one that Allah despises more than the munafiqeen. That's why Allah said, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ. But what I wanted to share with you today, my dear brothers and sisters, is 3 points. The human, Allah mentions these 3 points. What makes the oppressors, the leaders, these criminals to the core, evil to the core, the leaders of the Zionist, regime in Israel now, including the head of them, Benjamin Netanyahu. Why? What makes a human become like that? The human is very simple to figure out. Allah mentioned the sicknesses and the diseases so that you and I don't end up like that. 3 things move the human like nothing else. Number 1, physical pleasure. And that gets divided into 2. Physical pleasure, meaning enjoying the other gender, or physical pleasure, meaning the food. This physical pleasure, people will do wonders for it. It's a motivator. From the time you are a child, when you grow up, it becomes a motivator. Physical pleasure, especially after you hit puberty. You see, my dear brothers and sisters, that even in countries, we don't live in a Muslim country, everything is allowed. Like you would think, subhanallah, that in a country that a person can have a free relationship with anyone else, that because of that, pornography would not be a hot business. Why? Because why would you want to watch, right, pornography when you can do it easily? But you see in these societies, in Europe, in America, in China, in all of these societies, that even though the physical pleasure is very easy to get into, just 2 people consent, the concept of haram is not there, that's not enough. It's always on the hype that the pornography industry went from a 1 billion to 10 billion. Within few years, it will reach to $100 billion industry. It's catching the eyes of the big investors, literally humiliating the human. That's one. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our creation kind of made it easy. There is a line here, the diaphragm. Muslim doctors in the past, like Al-Razi and Ibn Sina and others, they said even physically, Allah put a diaphragm between your lower self and your upper self. Your lower self, the stomach and the private parts. Your higher self is the heart and the mind. And there is بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. There is al-hijab al-hajiz. And this hijab al-hajiz helps you actually breathe. Without it, you cannot breathe. As if you cannot breathe and you cannot live without a separation between your lower self that you share with the rest of the animal kingdom and between your upper self, your heart and mind. What is Islam in its essence? It's to call you to your higher self. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated? What did Allah legislate in our deen as part of ibadah? Ibadah is the month of Ramadan. Allah disconnects you from food and physical pleasure, including your wife or your husband. Don't take that slightly. It's because of these two that people go astray. They become kafir. Even if they are a Muslim, they are willing to sell Islam for that. The first thing is the physical pleasure. The second thing is the love of wealth. The human is very easy to control and very easy to figure out that we are so delusional that if I have more money, I'm going to have a better life. And even though we see it in front of our eyes every day, people who have a lot of money and don't have iman, they're not enjoying their life. It's not being a blessing on them. It's being a curse. Even though we see that, it still doesn't register. The only thing that will wake you up from that is detachment from your wealth and what Allah legislated, again, as a ibadah, not a law, like don't drink this, this is how you divide the inheritance, that's called the law, the sharia, the shari'. No, ibadat, that you give your money away in the form of zakah as minimum, and in the form of sadaqah, which is open-ended. We have people like Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the four khulafa, all of them, at one moment, they gave up everything they own. The most one who did it was Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He was wealthy, he will donate everything, drop to zero, then donate everything, then drop to zero, then build his wealth again, drop to zero. And likewise did Sayyidina Umar, likewise did Sayyidina Uthman, likewise did Sayyidina Ali, and even Abdul Rahman ibn Auf radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was nominated to be Khalifa but refused to become a Khalifa. Second is wealth. The third that appeals to the human, and it has nothing to do with the physical, this has nothing to do with food and physical pleasure, nor it has to do with wealth, because why do we love wealth? Because we get to buy more things, and it can only satisfy us materialistically. That's the only way it can. Wealth can only satisfy you, and everybody knows that. Even people who don't believe in God know that. Money can only buy you materialistic things. It cannot buy you happiness. The third item is not physical. It's not materialistic. It's a delusion in the mind of the human, which is the love of control and power. The love of control and power. This thing in us, again, Allah told us, legislated in Islam as a ibadah, one of the 5 pillars of Islam and one of the 6 articles of Iman. It's the common denominator in all the teachings of Islam. It's the spine of Islam, which is La ilaha illallah. What does that mean? You are not God, so don't act like one. I tell people, you start acting like God when, one, you're faced with so much pressure and you fall apart because you can only think of relying on yourself. You don't think of relying on Allah. That's why you collapse. You only collapse when you think you are alone in this struggle. But if you ever think that Allah is with you because you are with Allah, you will never collapse, because nothing can beat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing when a person plays like God is when a person wants to be in control and have power. You know, many people are not, they're not desired, they don't like physical pleasure, nor they like money. They just want to be in control. I don't care about the money. Some people are like that. And when these people become in charge, humanity will suffer. It's just a delusion. It's just, I want to be God. From An-Namrud, who said, I am God at the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and before him, to Fir'aun, the Pharaoh with Moses, who said, I'm your greatest God, to anyone that came after that and did the same thing. Because of these 3 things, You will have problems in your personal life if you don't know how to control them. The love of control and power, you treat it with La ilaha illallah. The love of wealth, you treat it with zakah and sadaqah. The love of the physical pleasure, you treat it with fasting. If you don't do that, then you are like everyone else. And the world problems right now, even look at this Palestinian issue right now. What is it? No, I just want to be in control. I want to be the boss. I want this to be only mine. I don't want you to live on this land. I want you to get out. No. I don't want to share. No. I don't want to share. No sharing. What is this? This is someone acting like they are God. When do you act when you have power? When you are miskeen, you don't do that. But when you have power and strength, you start acting like that. And how many times in your lifetime and my lifetime we saw a person who was miskeen, like didn't have power, yes, very humble. Then once they tasted money and power, they became the ugliest person and they became tyrants in front of your eyes and my eyes. From nobody to somebody to someone who wants to be everybody in control. And that's why, my dear brothers and sisters, this explains what's happening right now. Allah is splitting the good and the bad in this ummah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in Al-Quran, I was doing a research this morning, how much Allah focused that even people for the love of money, they will sell God and religion itself. 7 times Allah said, Ishtaraw bi ayatillahi thamanan qalila. Or, Ishtaraw dalalata bil huda. They sold hidayah and they bought dalala. Why? For financial gain. Ishtaraw al-kufra bil-iman. They sold the iman, they bought kufr. Why? For wealth. Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in the Quran almost 20 times ishtaraw, yashtarun, tashtarun. If you put them all together, you come up with like 15 to 20 times in which Allah tells us that amongst the children of Israel, warning us not to be like them. And we know there is people amongst us like that. That they will sell their deen for the sake of the dunya. Why? Because the human is very easy to figure out. Either physical pleasure or wealth or power. Look what happens in the political game around us. People who want to be in control, they come to someone who's in power, Congress or this. They send on him physical pleasure. He falls down immediately. You just have to seduce him with somebody and record him. Then they give him money, bribe, and they record him. And now they tell him, you're going to have to vote the way we tell you to vote because we have things against you. All of this is scandal. Watch all the scandals that happen in the history of mankind and in the history of this country. What is it? Money and physical pleasure. Using women against men. And in some cases, obviously, way much less using men against women. Khalas. The person falls down. Now you have something against them. Now you can control them. So these 3 go side by side. Even power comes through the control of wealth and physical pleasure. My dear brothers and sisters, our deen is the only solution to the world. But what happens when the people that carry the deen, they are not practicing it themselves? Then we have a double problem. As the Sha'ir said, Ya ulama antum milhul balad, ma tasna'ul baladu idha al-milhu fasad. Oh, people of knowledge, you are the salt of the town. You know, when we want to preserve something, we put salt on it. We preserve it. What happens, how can you preserve anything? He said, ulama are like the salt that preserves anything. How can we preserve anything if the salt is no more salt? You can't preserve anything. So may Allah Azza wa Jal awaken us to our reality. May Allah Azza wa Jal look at us and see us concerned about our brothers and sisters in Palestine. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us discomfort so that we look honorable in His eyes. And may Allah Azza wa Jal inspire us to take an action to help the oppressed around the world. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. أقول ما تسمعون واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه والغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. My dear brothers and sisters, every day you should introduce making dua, showing Allah concern to your daily schedule for the people of Gaza. Every day you should do Qiyamul Layl. Every day, even if it is a little bit. After Isha, by the way, after Isha and Sunnat al-Isha, any prayers that you pray is considered Qiyamul Layl. We know some Sahaba used to do Qiyamul Layl, then go to sleep, and some used to go to sleep, then pray Qiyamul Layl. You know, make dua, read Quran, try to see what's wrong with us and what's wrong with the world through the book of Allah, right? Show Allah some concerns, donate, be activists, encourage. Don't destroy people's himma, by discouraging them from being activists. Oh, nothing works, the whole world is corrupt. You know, when people talk like that, they don't want to take an action, and they don't want you to take an action. When people say, oh, there's no point, everything is... No, not everyone is corrupt. That's not true. MashaAllah, one of the best Muslim communities around the world are Muslims in America. We're not going to let anyone beat our morale down and make us hopeless. We are Muslims. We do our best. Sometimes Allah gives victory, like Dawood and Sulaiman, alayhim wassalam. Sometimes Allah decides no victory, like the people of Ashabul Ukhdud. What's happening to the people of Gaza is exactly what happened to the people in Ashabul Ukhdud. When Allah mentioned them, Allah spoke to them with so much pride, like Allah was proud of these people. What did they do? They just got bombed to death. They got burned to death in their homes, in their markets, and some of them, they even took them to a designated location and burned them all. We don't object what we are scared of ourselves, that we're not doing what we are supposed to do. But how is this thing gonna go? Only Allah knows. But my dear brothers and sisters, I tell you, if this, what's happening right now, if this dies down without the Muslim Ummah putting their act together, I pray to Allah that doesn't happen, but that will take us into another 100 years of humiliation. And it's gonna make it 10 times harder for us to put our act together again. If you read history, you know that there is few moments that people can come together and claim justice. If they don't do that, 100 years easily pass by and nothing changed. And it could be 300 years. Allah gave us the example of Sayyidina Al-Uzair alayhi salam. It took 100 years. He went to sleep 100 years and Allah changed things. Al-Uzair, number one, after the destruction of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar. Second example in the Quran, it took 300 years. The youth of the cave, and today is Yawm al-Jumu'ah, read Surah Al-Kahf. Third example in the Quran, the story of Nuh alayhi salam, 950 years. So it gives us 100, 300, or 900. Which one would you like? How long would you like the humiliation to go on? If we don't put our act together, it's not a rosy picture at all. And that's why we have to do our best, and Allah Azza wa Jal will put His barakah in our efforts. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. اللهم اغفر لنا والمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك قريب سميع مجيب الدعوات. اللهم أعز بنا الإسلام وانصر بنا المسلمين وأعلي بنا كلمتي الحق والدين. اللهم ارحم إخواننا المسلمين في فلسطين. اللهم ارحمهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم. اللهم يا رب العالمين أوقف القتل وأوقف الدمار يا رب العالمين. اللهم أعنا على إعانتهم يا أكرم الأكرمين يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ونبيك محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. There is a salat janaza after salat al-Jum'ah. وأقم الصلاة إن صلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر. والله يعلم ما تصنعون. May Allah have mercy on the one who passed away. آمين يا رب العالمين.